It was a very cold, rainy night. Amaka sat on the bed. She was unable to sleep, her eyes clouded with unshed tears as she muttered some words which were barely audible. Uzo stretched out his hand on the bed in an attempt to cuddle her, but he discovered that she was not lying on the bed. With sleepy eyes, Uzo opened his eyes faintly. Then he realized that Amaka was sitting on the bed instead of lying. "You are not sleeping. Why?" he asked her. "How can I sleep when my heart is heavy? How can I sleep when the gods have decided to play deaf towards our cries?" Amaka sobbed bitterly. "Aminim, it is okay. Oh. Please stop crying. At the right time, it will happen. Remember what Ezenwanyị said though? She said that it wouldn't happen in an atmosphere of sadness. Nkem biko cheer. Stop crying, own name. Let us sleep, my love," Uzo said to her while drawing her close to his bosom. With that, Amaka stopped weeping, laid her head on his chest, and she eventually slept off. Amaka and Uzo were childhood lovers who eventually got married. Their wedding was so big that it became the talk of the town, as no other wedding ceremony was able to beat their record in the village for 2 good years. They are so rich to the extent that they have lost count of how many villagers they feed daily. But amidst these riches and wealth, something was lacking in their union. It is the lack of a child in the beautiful home. It was the lack of the cry of a baby in their beautiful home. This worried Amaka so much. To her, the riches that surrounded her, the fine clothes, expensive jewelries, and other possessions all seemed like mockery in the face of her deepest longings. Their wealth was immense, but it did little to fill the void in their hearts. They've been married for years, yet no cry of a baby had been heard in their home. Each night, Amaka will cry herself to sleep, the silence of their home echoing her sorrow. The laughter of children playing outside only intensified her grief. Her friends with whom she had walked down the aisle on their wedding days now cradled their babies in their arms. Her, her heart ached every time she saw them, the pang of longing a constant companion. For years, they prayed, visited healers, and made sacrifices, yet no child came to bless their union. They had sought for solutions in different places, but all came back with the same result. Every place they went, they kept telling them that they should be patient, that in due time, children will come. One day, Amaka decided that she could no longer bear the emptiness, so she decided to visit the village priestess again. When she got there, the priestess greeted her with a knowing smile, her eyes filled with compassion. "Welcome, Amaka," the priestess said, her voice soft yet commanding. "You are here again." Then Amaka fell down on her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Please help me. I want a child more than any other thing," Amaka said. The priestess nodded. "You will have children, Amaka. I have assured you this before. You go home, let your mind be at rest. The ways of the gods are not always the ways of men, remember. At the right time, you will carry your child, Amaka," the priestess assured her. But Amaka said tearfully, "Ezenwanyị, how long? How long do I have to wait? Haven't I been patient enough? Where have I offended the gods? Do they want me to carry my babies at old age when my bones are already fragile? Ezenwanyị, I want to carry my children now that I'm still strong," she said, crying even more. The princess looked at her with mercy and said, "If the God grants you your wish now, can you take care of that child?" Amaka said, "Why won't I? I will treasure the child like my life depends on it." Then the priestess went into her inner shrine to perform some divination. Then she emerged few minutes later and said to Amaka, "Listen carefully to this instruction. Your first child will come to you in a strange way, but this child will open doors for others to follow. Remember, this child must always be happy. You must treat her right all the time. Then she said, "Now you can leave." Amaka's heart soared with hope. She thanked the priestess profusely and returned home. Her spirit lifted for the first time in months as she expected to get pregnant. However, as the months passed and there wasn't any sign of pregnancy, her hope began to wane. She returned back to the priestess, her voice trembling with desperation as she spoke. "Ezenwine, you told me that I will carry my babies. This is 6 months gone now. When will this happen?" "Be patient," the princess advised. "The child will come in due time. Worry not. Just go home." Then Amaka left feeling disappointed. Months passed and there wasn't any positive sign yet again. Amaka was so worried, but she decided to continue with her life anyway. One day, while fetching water from the stream, Amaka noticed a basket floating towards her. It was an unusual sight and her curiosity got the better of her. The basket top was covered in white silk cloth. Then all of a sudden, the basket stopped at her feet. Her heart pounded as she hesitated, fear and curiosity warring within her. But gathering her courage, she lifted the cloth off the basket and to her greatest surprise, laid a baby girl in the basket. She was the most beautiful baby Amaka has ever seen. The baby had smooth dark skin that seemed to glow in the sunlight, and coily set of black hair adorned her tiny head. Her eyes wide and bright in a deep shade of brown, and her plump cheeks were flushed a rosy pink. As their eyes met, the baby began to cry, a sound so heart-wrenching that it pierced Amaka's soul. Who could have abandoned such a beautiful child in the river? Amaka wondered. The baby's cries intensified and Amaka's heart melted. "What am I to do with you now?" she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I don't know your mother. What should I do?" Amaka asked. Unable to bear the baby's distress, Amaka scooped her up, cradling her gently. The baby's cries subsided as she nestled in Amaka's arm. Her tiny finger grasped at Amaka's dress. Amaka stood confused for a while, not knowing what to do with the baby. Then she thought to take the baby home to show her husband. So she hurried back home, her mind racing with possibilities. When she got home, Uzo, her husband, was surprised to see his wife return with a baby in her arms. She recounted the event at the stream, her voice filled with wonder and concern. "What should we do?" she asked. Uzo thought for a while and said, "Maybe the king can help us find her parents." "Let us take her to the king's palace immediately," Uzo suggested. So they took the baby to the king, who listened intently as Amaka narrated everything. Then the king instructed the town criers to announce the discovery. The news spread quickly, and soon the palace was filled with villagers hoping to claim the child. But after a long while, no one could recognize the baby as theirs. When it seems that hope was lost, the village priestess entered the palace. She looked at Amaka and smiled. Then she said, "Find that skipper. That is what the gods have decreed. You and your husband are to take care of this child as your own. Take her home and treat her right," she said. Amaka and Uzo were overjoyed, so they returned home with the baby, whom they named Ngozi, which means blessing. And this marked the beginning of good things in their lives, because from that day henceforth, their lives were transformed. Ngozi grew quickly, her beauty only increasing with each passing day. Her laughter was so infectious, her smile a beacon of joy. She was kind-hearted and always willing to help others, a trait that endeared her to everyone in the village. As Ngozi grew, so did the wealth of her parents. Their fortunes seemed to multiply overnight, and their home became a place of happiness and laughter. Ngozi's positive attitude and joyful spirit were like a magnet, drawing people to her and also drawing wealth to her parents. She was loved by all, From the youngest child to the oldest eldest, her presence brought a sense of peace and prosperity to her home and to the village at large. With each passing year, Amaka's heart was filled with gratitude every time she looked at Ngozi. She knew that the priestess' words had come true. Most times, Amaka would sit staring at Ngozi and she reflected on the strange and miraculous way Ngozi has come into their life. The memory of that fateful day at the stream remained etched in her heart, a reminder of the blessing that followed. Few years later, and to everyone's surprise, Amaka became pregnant. She gave birth to a beautiful girl and she was named Mma, meaning beauty. The following year, another blessing came again in form of a son whom they named Ike. And again, 2 years later, Amaka gave birth again to a girl named Uju. Their family was so complete, and this made the dynamics in their household to shift. As Amaka's biological children grew, her attitude towards Ngozi started to change. Resentment crept into her heart, and she began to see Ngozi as an outsider, as a child who is not of her flesh and blood. One day, as Amaka came back from the market, Ngozi ran towards her to carry the basket on her head. Ngozi joyfully said, "Mama, welcome. You are not my child," Amaka said harshly. "I picked you from the river. How many times do I have to tell you this girl?" This was struck Ngozi's heart deeply, and her once radiant smile faded away. The other children, except for Uju, mirrored their mother's behavior. Mma and Ike mocked and bullied Ngozi, making her feel even more unwelcome and unloved. Uju, however, was different. She adored Ngozi and treated her like a true sister. She would always share her food and comfort Ngozi whenever she cried, and she defended her against Mma and Ike's trouble. "Don't listen to them, Ngozi," Uju will always say, holding her sister's hand. "You are a blessing to this family, and I love you so much. You are my sister, never ever forget that." The bond between Uju and Ngozi grew stronger with each passing day, providing Ngozi with a glimmer of hope in the midst of all her traumas. One day, Amaka opened the pot of soup and discovered that a piece of meat was missing. She called out Ngozi's name in the harshest tone ever. Ngozi ran to her trembling. "You called me, Mama," Ngozi said in a very trembling voice. Then Amaka drew her ear and said, "You are not just evil, now you have added stealing to it." "Ngozi, where is the meat in my pot?" Amaka asked, looking so angry. Ngozi was confused. Then she said, "Meat? I don't know. I didn't take any meat, Mama." But it seemed Amaka's anger reached a boiling point. In a flash of rage, she beat Ngozi so hard, leaving deep bruises all over her body. The pain and humiliation were too much for Ngozi to bear. So she ran to the river, tears streaming down her face, and cried to the river goddess. "Oh, great mother, please help me," Ngozi sobbed. "I cannot endure this any longer." She said that she's not my mother. She said that she picks me up from the river. "Please, I want to come back home. I am tired of the pain." She continued crying. Eventually, she got so weak and she passed out. Suddenly, the river began to glow and the water shimmered with a divine light. From the depth of the river emerged the river goddess with a majestic and commanding presence. She gently cradled Ngozi in her arms and whispered soothing words to her and said, "You have suffered enough, my child. It is time for you to come home." Then she took Ngozi up, and before a twinkle of an eye, she vanished into the river with her. Meanwhile, back at Amaka's house, as night fell, Uju grew so worried about Ngozi's whereabouts. She asked her mother, but Amaka dismissed her concern, saying, "Maybe the homeless girl has wandered away." Amaka said coldly, "Now I can have peace in my own home with my own children," she said. Mma and Ikem laughed, but Uju was heartbroken, and all through the night, she prayed fervently for Ngozi's safe return. A week later, misfortune began to befall Amaka and Uzo's household. At first, Uzo's warehouse, which was filled with their harvest, caught fire and burnt to the ground. Next, strange insects devoured all the crops in their fields, leaving them destitute. As if the loss was not enough, the next week, Mma fell gravely ill. Despite all the treatments and efforts, her condition worsened. Fever wrecked her body, and no medicine could ever ease her suffering. Days later, she passed away, leaving a void in the family. A week later, their son Ikem was playing in the garden one afternoon when a mysterious snake appeared from nowhere and bit him. The venom acted swiftly, and Ikem died instantly right before Amaka could do anything. Desperate and scared, Amaka and Uzo decided to seek answers from the village chief priestess, as they were scared of losing their only surviving child, Uju. They narrated their plight to the priestess. She listened carefully, then turned to Amaka and told her the harsh truth. "You brought these calamities upon yourself," the priestess says. "Do you remember what I told you when you came seeking for the fruit of the womb?" Amaka answered and said, "Yes, you told me that I should make sure that my first child is always happy. But Ezenwai, I adhered to all your instructions. I never mistreated my first child, yet she died." The priestess looked at her and said, "Amaka, you got it wrong. Your first child was Ngozi. You treated her horribly. Immediately you started having other children. The river goddess is very angry because Ngozi returned to the river in tears. She was maltreated by you and your two children. The only reason your youngest child, Uju, is still alive is because she was kind to Ngozi." Upon hearing this, Amaka cried. She wished she could turn back the hands of time. Then also asked, "Please, Ezenwai, is there anything we can do to salvage the situation?" The princess answered and said, "Yes." So she advised them to go back to the river and beg the river goddess and Ngozi for forgiveness. Then she gave them a list containing the items that would be needed for their appeasement, and then she asked them to return back after 4 market days. On the fourth market day, accompanied by the priestess Amaka, Uzo, and Uju, they made their way to the river. They carried everything needed for the sacrifice and their heartfelt apologies. Kneeling by the river bank, they pleaded for mercy. "Great mother of the river, we have wronged you and Ngozi," Amaka cried. "Please forgive us and lift this curse from our family." Then her husband and the priestess joined in begging the river goddess. Suddenly, the river stirred, and the divine light of the goddess illuminated the surrounding. The river goddess appeared, her expression stern but compassionate. She listened to their plea and finally spoke. "Your remorse is noted, but if given the opportunity next time, you must learn to cherish and respect the blessings given to you. I will leave the course, but remember those lessons very well. Now you can go and sin no more." Then they returned home, hoping for the best, even though they were still afraid. Weeks after their placement at the river, prosperity slowly returned to Amaka and Uzo's household. Their business improved and joy began to seep back into their lives. However, they could never have any more children apart from Uju. The family cherished Uju even more, understanding the value of kindness and the consequences of cruelty. Uju, though saddened by the loss of her siblings, held onto the memory of Ngozi, her true sister, with love and respect. Moral of the story: the tale of Amaka, Uzo, and Ngozi teaches us the importance of kindness, compassion, and gratitude. It reminds us that blessings should be cherished and those who come into our life should be treated with love and respect. Cruelty and ingratitude can lead to dire consequences, while kindness and genuine remorse can pave the way for forgiveness and renewed hope. Also, we should also learn to treat every child under our care with love and compassion. Irrespective of whether they are biological children or not, every child deserves our love. So guys, that's the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned your own lesson. Please, I would love to read from you what you also learned from this story, because I would love to learn from you also. Please, if you enjoyed the story and you've not subscribed to this channel, kindly subscribe to this channel. This is your little way of supporting this my baby channel. Kindly help this channel to grow by subscribing. Comment, like, and share the story to your loved ones. Please don't leave without subscribing. Please support and help my channel to grow by subscribing. And until our next story, see you. Bye bye and remain blessed.